Okay, with me today, this is December 17th. With me today is University of Houston's Director of Campus Safety Systems, RonHarris, and we are going to commence the interview with this first question. What is the predominant form of access control on your campus?
So we have an access control software platform of Linnell, which we are soon to migrate away from to a new access control software, Access Insight. We currently use for physical security devices, peripheral devices. We have a host of different ones. We have hardwired devices, which is based off of the Mercury platform. We have offline locks in our residential areas, which we are eagerly upgrading, trying to upgrade now. We have wireless and PoE devices, which is part of our new design criteria platform for access control. We have recently upgraded our identity card technology credential to Deathfire EV1, so we are enthusiastic about the approach that we're taking now to upgrade all of our infrastructure and all the other different form factors that we have.
So it sounds like you've got an array of things going on. If you were to sort of boil that down into physical access control as an approach, what do you see as the limitations of how you're doing it now or in this transition?
Well, the limitations are based upon the infrastructure that you currently have. So anything that you have that is that the campus decide to go with that was post proxy, then those are some of the limitations you have based off of giving the student experience of being able to use the newer technology as we move toward mobile and so forth. So our biggest limitation is still the wide range of MagTrack readers that we have currently on our campus, which doesn't support the new EV1 technology, nor does it support our path forward for using our Deathfire EV1 and our mobile credential. So that would be probably the biggest limitations that we have.
And so that's a reader total overhaul of the readers across campus.
Across the entire campus, which has to also align with our credential being able to be not only managed from physical security, but also align with our other partners that we have across campus, including our libraries and our rec centers and so forth.
Now, that brings up an interesting perspective because the university is a little bit like a small city. How does that create challenges for you as a security, director for safety, et cetera? How does having this sort of small city and, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you have to find out what your foundational goal is and what attributes attribute to that foundational goal, right? So, number one, what is the biggest part of your card technology? What is it used for the most across campus? And if I would have to answer that question, it would be for security, right? We have over 2,000 readers across our campus, right? And then you start looking at across our campus, what else do we use our card for currently today, right? We currently use it inside of our recreation center so that the students can have permission levels to get in and out of that based off of their association with that actual department. We also use it for our food service, so for transactions, and so that's major. Would be the second largest department that would use the card for transact. And then you look at also the library. So in looking at each one of your partners across campus that you have to work with to ensure that the card technology will work, then that's your foundational goal there, ensuring that your next move will also contribute to their success and contribute to their path as you move forward. And so that gets a little sticky sometimes because a lot of our different partners are not prepared for a credential that's encrypted because they don't have the technology behind it to support it, right? So you have to get all your stakeholders together in one room, and you have to talk about how the identity will be managed moving forward, right? And within that identity, what type of encryption level will we have, right? And then once that decision is determined of what you have, how you want to move, and what the path forward is, you then begin to talk about the pros and cons of doing it both, whether you want to go from a magstripe to just proxy, right? Or you want to go from magstripe to DESFire EV1, right? So that's a huge jump. But when we look at security today, my question would always be to any one of our stakeholders, why continue to have us using a type of credential that can be duplicated by anyone who walks across our campus? So again, the safety and security begins to be more impactful to the decision-making process versus looking at being able to check out a book, although it's still very important. There's technologies out there that can support those areas as well.
So the move from the magstripe to DESFire is really, it's an obvious one. I think you just mentioned, that the spoofing capabilities that bad actors have of spoofing the magstripe. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how you feel about going to DESFire and that changes your security posture?
Well, I think there's two major things that you look at when you decide to go to a DESFire EV1. One is, who will create your DESFire EV1? How proprietary will that DESFire EV1 be, right? What type of encryption level are you going to use, and who are you going to trust with those keys, right? So that's the first piece of it. It's understanding if you want a proprietary DESFire EV1, or does the university want to own our own DESFire EV1, right? Which is a huge conversation, because this will then in turn set the standard whether or not we will also be able to have an open platform, open architecture, mobile credential as well. So I think that's the primary source of being able to understand going to a DESFire EV1, the encryption level that's there. How do you manage that, and what does that encryption level support, and who do you give those keys to?
Great. I think that really addresses to the question of what are the drivers to upgrading your access solution, or at least form factors. Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think the driving point is yes, it is security and encryption, right? Of course, it is that, but it's also the versatility that you have with having DESFire EV1 as your credential on the back end. Now you're adding in layers of different things that for student experience, for higher education, that you can offer to your students, including mobile credentialing, including Transact, including internally working with outside partners outside the university to offer the students the ability to be able to use their card outside the university for dining, for even transit, right? To even use it as transit. But interior-wise, also, now we start thinking about, well, what else can we do that's impactful to the university that adds other security levels and that holds and can control data, right? So now we're looking at, okay, so we can have, through the DESFire EV1, we can have everyone across our campus use their card now to not only clock in for those hourly employees, but also access their computers, right? Then we say, okay, well, that's great. That's a great thing that you can do. That's a great opportunity for us. Well, what else can we do? Well, with the DESFire EV1 credential we have now that's encrypted, and the layers that are accessible, we can now use the same card technology to control our HVAC systems through BACnet, right? So it just opens up a wide range of avenues that we can use with this one card across our campus that actually touches not only just our students, but our staff, our operational guides and structure that we have, and being able to now have a system that we can all manage holistically, and we can set our standards now to look forward to the new integration path that's going to come out in the next 5 or 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Have you seen I'm not sure how to ask this question, from a magstripe perspective, student experience is what versus a DESFire perspective? Put your mind in the mind of the student. What is it for them? Did they look at it and say, "Wow, this is changing my education experience at the University of Houston"?
Students don't look at their educational experience. They're kids, right? They're going to look at what we tell them is going to be best. The only thing the students are going to look at is, how can I use my phone for everything that I do, right? So from a MagStripe perspective, you cannot use your phone for that, right? But that's why EV1, yes, we can now do mobile credentialing. So I don't think the goal here is to establish to a student the importance of MagStripe versus the DES5 EV1. It's the comfortability that they have and also integrating with technology that they see every day, right? So it's not, training them on what the MagStripe is and how unsecure it is and how secure the EV1 is, right? It's saying, hey, based off technology, we're going to add layers of encryption to now your phone so that you can use your phone for, and unfortunately, I hate using this word, but I'll use it for your convenience, right? Because convenience and security, of course, run a parallel line, so we don't want to cross-contaminate those two areas, right? So for student experience-wise, it's being able to offer them the technology that supports their daily activities they do across campus and making it a little easier for them, right? Instead of having to swipe now, you can walk and you can tap and go, right? You can use your phone, you can twist and go with your phone.
Is there any sense that it's almost an expectation that they might have that, especially, let's say, students who will be freshmen in 3 years or 4 years, that their phone would be the only device, and if they couldn't use their phone, what kind of place is this?
I don't think you have to push that out to 3 years. I think you can push that out a year.
Oh, really? Yeah.
You just got to look at what the market trends are. I mean, look at what Apple's doing right now, right? Apple is driving the technology field in credential, right? In identity management and credential, right? And so all the Apple users are seeing that. And as they see that, they're expecting their phones to do every single thing. Pretty soon, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to want their phone to drive their car, right? I mean, because I can read my text messages in my car and drive my car at the same time, right? I mean, so it's what the market pushes. Is also with it, with where we are right now, safety and security wise in higher education, with all the active shooter situations and so forth. Students want to be able to be more reliable on their phones, and unfortunately, the perception is that your phone makes you more secure, right? And if you put the app on their phone, unfortunately, that's what they believe. We in physical security, we know different, but we have to offer the students the value of having that ability, as well as on the back end, making sure that we are doing the best thing for the student and ensuring that the safety and security is the number one reason why we've made these transitions. Yeah.
I'm assuming that you were the genesis behind migrating from MagStripe. Is that the case? Are you?
Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. So I'm going to have to say no to that answer to that question. I'm going to say there was a huge conversation about it, and I may have started the process, but our Cool Card office is the one who led the identity management decision. Again, on the back end, the credential-wise, yes, I would say that would be me. But part of this conversation began because of the identity management, right? Not managing the identity on a MagStripe card, but managing the identity better with the new software program to support Transact across campus.
Yeah.
So as the conversation began to be discussed about Transact, right, and how do we move away from MagStripe, of course, my end, and in the security realm, I want to understand what you want, what you're trying to accomplish, and I want to add in the security layers to it. So that security layer was the EV1-5. So yes, I led that approach, but changing the card as holistically across our campus was a decision between identity security and the card office.
Great. We wouldn't quote you on any of that anyway, being sort of the drivers. I think
good.
That was there was it's more of a lead-in of just saying sometimes, when new technology is introduced, there's opposing forces because change, or the spend is not something that people value. And I can't imagine in this day that security on the campus wouldn't be a high value. But were there obstacles that you faced, when this upgrade was proposed?
Yes.
And what might be the biggest of those?
Because of the politically correctly stating this, because of the different goals or the primary functions of the different departments, the conversation to upgrade had to be had, right? And so, although one perspective is that we want to get a new card to support our Transact and support identity management and bring in a new company that can support the card office itself, because we had a homegrown system. From my end, I'm always thinking about the physical security aspect of it, right? So, although our goals are not truly aligned, the path to get there has to be aligned, right? So, the obstacles were trying to ensure we are able to integrate and we are able to offer each one of those different shareholders and those partners everything we could by still ensuring that we are keeping it an encryption level that's going to secure our card, but also not only just the encryption level and securing our card, but to ensure that it's able to work with all the different technologies we have across campus, right? So for the library, they, of course, they're thinking about their books, right? And of course, for the recreation center, they're thinking about people gaining access into the rec through their own system that they have that processes that, right? And for us, we're thinking about the access control platform, and the card office thinking about the Transact part of it, right? So you have to ensure that each stakeholder understands what we're doing, where we're going, and understand that there's going to be obstacles with that they're going to have to face with the systems that they manage. And that is the biggest obstacle there, because each system may manage differently, right? And the good thing about EV1 though is that if you own the key, you give that key to each one of those, a read key to each one of those different manufacturers, and the problem goes away. They just have to make their systems work with it, right? So that's the biggest obstacle.
That's great. So if you were to sort of turn that around, and let's say another university was calling you, and they read this paper and they said, "Hey, Ron, can you give me some advice of how should we start in this process so we don't, we don't stumble through the process making mistake after mistake?" And I'm not asking for, give me the best practices document, but if there's one thing or two things that you think every single person who is going through this migration process, these are the things that you need to do and make sure of it.
I think that you have to do the same thing you would do with any security sensitive document, data, software application that you have to evaluate the entire campus on the actual systems that it touches, right? You have to have that evaluation. I think a lot of times at the university go at this in a backward direction. They look at what has happened, like for instance, oh, our MagStripe card was duplicated. Oh, we got to go to EV1, right? And that's an automatic reaction, right? We got to go to proxy, we got to go to EV1. And I think that we put systems in place and we build these system foundations, and we don't understand every single element that this touches and how the interaction will happen, right? So I think the first thing you have to do is an evaluation. Evaluation has to be done over all your stakeholders and over the entire campus. That's number one. The second thing that you have to do is you have to figure out how much open architecture you have with all the systems that you have, right? How these systems interact and will communicate to the actual card technology that you're going to. And then the contribution that is going to be back to our students and our faculty and staff, right? So I think if you take those three things and you put those three things on the table, and you have every single department give you all the data from their areas, you take that together and you get a committee of 4 or 5 people, and you let them all sit down and go through that and evaluate that data and put all of your problems and concerns down on paper. But when you invite 50 people, then you'll never get it accomplished. It's just never going to happen.
Good point. Cool. I want to move into the second section, where do you want to be now? And that opens with a question of what trends are you seeing in access control for higher education? And that's really a question about that's very open, right? It could be form factors, it could be systems integrated, it could be whatever. So
So that's a great question too on the trends right now. Of course, every university, their primary goal is to attract students, of course, right? That's who pays all of us, right? So the trends have to be based up off of that element, right? How do we attract more students, and what does that mean in the safety and security realm? I'm pretty sure you out there working with HID so long, you understand that we work on the back end processes, right? We do everything behind the scenes, right? So what do we do to add to their student success? Well, no one wants to go to any college unless they can feel the security being offered there at that university, especially because of all the mass shootings and things that have happened inside the university, right? All the Title IX issues and so forth. So the biggest trends I see is being able to offer the students the convenience of using their phones through mobile app, right? For not only transacting security, but for external organizational purchases as well, from McDonald's up the street or Popeyes or even the transit system that runs across through campuses. So that's one of the major trends that I see. The other thing I see in higher education for is access control is integration. Integrating your access control systems to all your other physical security systems that you have. Now, you won't see that up in the forefront of coming onto a campus, but on the back end, all the security specialists, all the security subject matter experts are discussing, how do I make this system work with all my other physical security systems? And what does that mean for me? That means that now we're able to do dual verification of alarms. We're able to do look at full integrations. We're able to tie in an access control point to a camera. We're able to look at all our code blues and our ALPR cameras together all in one security operations center. So I think that is the biggest piece of being able to offer a more secure environment for our students.
That's great. Second question in that line is, what upgrades to your access control experience would you like to adopt in the short term? And I know you're kind of in the midst of one now, but sort of separate from that or piggybacked with that, what would you like to do?
Well, of course, our readers, right? Upgrading our readers. We're upgrading our access control platform right now to a new access control platform, which is going to give us a better GUI. It's going to give us a more if and then true false local logic type of programming standards, right? Tie in our access control system right now to our scheduling software across the entire university. We want to work on that as well, so that we can take a command, so that we can automate securing and unsecuring buildings as well as classrooms. Doing all our interior classroom doors with retrofitting them out to access control. We just did one building, we went keyless in the entire building. So I want to see more of that, us getting away from keys and add more access control points throughout the entire university where we can truly have true audit trails. We can design camera systems and intrusion systems that work directly with your card, and we can see post and pre-alarms from forced opens and triggers. Those things are things I think that are the most important as you continue to build your access control system and tie that access control system into all the other pieces that you have for physical security. So if I had an open checkbook, those are the things that I would actually
There you go.
Exactly.
The question I had just piqued my interest as you're talking. If you were to, I don't want to use your university as an example, but let's use the average university as an example. What percentage of entry points, building, closet, whatever that's currently could be accessed through a electronic physical access control are currently keyed without that functionality?
Which ones are currently which ones currently don't have access control on them?
Yeah, so if I were to answer that question, I'd say 45% of the doors, closets, whatever access point, I have to use a key to get in, and there's no option for me to use some electronic.
So there's options everywhere, right? So if you any door that you have, you can add access control to it, right? There's a very, very small percentage of doors that you cannot add access control to it, only because of the slimline design of the door. But even then, you still can add access control through strike plates or mag locks, which I'm not supportive of either one. But if we look at any university, I would say, if we had to say how much access control do they have per building, I would say it's probably less than 30% of their buildings that are access control.
That have electronic access control.
Right.
30%.
Right.
Okay. So there's still 70% of buildings you need a key to get into.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, let me say this. I'm not going to say you need a key to get into the building, but I'm pretty sure that that the building is 70% keyed versus access controlled. Now,
yeah, that's
I would say
better way to say it.
Right, exactly. Now, I would say that as any university, right, and luckily when I got to this university, these project was already gone, so my boss had the foresight to think about this before I got here. But when I first got employed to the university, we were already adding access control on all of our exterior doors, with two access control points being the minimal amount per building, right? So 2 card readers per building, right? Now that's still based off the building, right? That could go up, right, to more access control points, but at minimal 2 access control points, one being the ADA operator door, and the other being based off the functionality of that building, the access to the parking lots, and student movement across the campus going in and out of that building, right? So that is that's the key that we used in determining which 2 access control points. We chose the first one based off of the ADA operator, and it had to have it. And then the building occupants chose the second one based off of functionality for their operations and their students being able to get in and out, whether that was access to the building next door, which was part of their building, or it was based upon a parking lot being the closest place for students to walk from, right? So I believe every university should use that as a foundation to add an access control to their exterior doors. And I also believe that their exterior doors should be their primary focus across the entire university. That should be primary one to do if you're going to add access control.
That's great. I love that answer. What if it was a 30-70 ratio here? What, as a security professional, I mean, do you want to see it at 100%, or is that overkill? Do some doors?
Of course, it adds job security for me. Of course. I mean, but seriously, yes. I believe that in the world that we live in now, and the technology that's there, I believe that you could control access 100% of a building, and you could do it very cost effectively, right? And you will still be able to offer the type of new credential technology that's available out there for the market. And so by doing this, you just have a step down tier level based upon what type of access control device that you use. On all exterior doors, you have a hardwired device. Interior doors that you schedule for any type of reasons, you have a PoE lock, which is much cheaper than having a hardwire lock. And then on any doors that are not scheduled, like a electrical or mechanical room, you put a wireless lock, which is even cheaper than the PoE lock, right? So there's ways to do this in phases and based upon the technology that's available to get it as cost effective as possible. And you can actually then have keys on every door. Now, I'm not for putting keys on storage closets and janitor's closets and such, but pretty much 90% of the building will be controlled by access control.
Yeah. And why not? I mean, because you
could.
Yeah.
But I think if you start doing storage closets and janitor's closets, you're throwing money down the drain, right? And most universities don't have that type of money to throw down the drain.
Yeah.
And also, what is the probability of the amount of assets that can be stolen out of a storage closet or a janitor's closet, right? I mean,
especially by a university student.
right, exactly. Right. I mean, I didn't clean up at home coming up. Why would I clean up now?
unless somebody was storing beer in the janitor's closet, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think it's safe for me to assume that you guys aren't using mobile credentials now, but that's in the future with the migration.
Yes, we've tested it. We've tested the mobile credential through HID. On our campus, we actually had 15 different users on campus. They were all staff that had the mobile credential on their phone, and we tested it with them. And of course, I believe we liked it. I believe that I actually installed it on my boss, which is a VP, and his boss, the senior VP suite. So I was really asking that I either get fired or promoted. When I did. So, but I don't think we got any bad
feedback on
news briefs from it. So
yeah, what do you think the ETA for you guys would be regarding implementation, like full rollout?
Mobile credential? I see it being something that we do in 2020.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
I see it being something that is really, really key to us, and I see us being able to get it deployed by end of fiscal year 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine, you know, the thousands of students who suddenly they can do everything through their phone, and what a life changer that would be if you're not. I mean, you know how kids are. It's like you lose everything. Having an extra card, you know, you're tethered to your phone. It's like it's more important than, you know. I think my wife puts on her wedding ring like twice a week, but she carries her phone with her everywhere, you know. So, all right, let's see. We talked a little bit about how mobile access control enhances the student experience. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Well, I just as I said earlier, I think that it just gives the student the ability to be able to have their control inside their hands. I mean, it's comfortable for them, right? I mean, how often does a student walk out of their home, walk out of their dorm room, or arrive at campus without their card on them, right? And if they have their phone, which they're going to have, they still have access to be able to move around campus after hours to get in where they want to get to. But here's the problem with that, right? So I'll give you both the good and the bad to that. The bad piece of that is understanding how do you manage two credentials at this time, right? That's the key to having mobile credentials, right? So how do you because now you pretty much offer two different credentials. You offer the student a card credential and a phone credential. So how do you stop that from being used and actually, you know, given to a friend to use at their leisure, right? Because you have your phone and you give the credentials. So I think that's the other conversation that has to be had internal to the university of how do we manage two credentials at the same time, right? And do we have the capability of being able to automatically activate a credential once one credential is reported lost or stolen, right? So those are the conversations you have to have, because that's going to impact the student experience. That's going to impact whether or not the student is happy about it. And the other conversation is, how do you associate the cost associated with that, right, to the student, right? Because there's a cost both for the mobile app as well as the cost for the physical card. So those are the things that have to be a fine-tuned conversation based upon deployment of a mobile credential.
And so you kind of mentioned a little bit about, and this the subtext of it is that it's potentially a security problem if they have both form factors, right, the mobile and the card, and you issue both to a student. They can just let their buddy borrow it. But are there? Let's just stick with the mobile side of it. How much? Let's say you go a route where it's an either or. They either get the mobile or the card or fob or whatever. If you go strictly with mobile, what's the greater enhanced security going with mobile than with the card?
You can't go with just mobile anywhere.
Got it.
at any time, because you have too many other stakeholders that use the physical card and that need their physical card still, and they're not positioned for mobile, unless you are Apple University, right? That and Apple has went in and changed everything that they use, and they're forcing the entire campus to be able to be accessible to use Apple Wallet, right? There's no other way to do it, right? So, and I don't see that happening because everyone's not an Apple customer, right? So that's something that almost can't be done either, right? Until Apple decides to play at the same ballpark as everyone else, as Android, right? So going total mobile will never happen. I think the physical card will never, ever disappear. And that's based off a lot of different things. And I'll add this to it. Just think about safety measures, right? When you have an incident that occur on campus, one great thing about having your physical card around your neck or visible is you're more easily identifiable for the officers as they're doing their investigation and as they're doing their things, right? So it adds value to have a student with a card on them at all times, around their neck, and visible. So it adds a lot of value to our police force, right? So going away from cards is something I wouldn't ever suggest. I would suggest, however, that we are able to fine tune both the mobile and the physical card credential and the activation of those credentials.
Right. So maybe the card has a certain level of security and the phone has a different level. Is that what you mean by that?
No, one has to be the predominant one, though, based upon the student. And the student gets the chance to the student has the opportunity to make that choice, right? The student says, I want my mobile app to be my primary source of access, right? And that's fine. And and we can manage that. And we have to have a process in place just in case your mobile app isn't functioning, where we can activate or deactivate your card or your mobile. Right? So that's going to be based off process theories in the back and procedures that's going to have to be put in place on the back end to ensure that we're still giving the student the same type of security, and also offer them that convenience that they're looking for, but managing it on the back end. It's just a deeper dive conversation they have to have on how are you managing this within your access control system.
So I think what you're saying too is that while mobile brings just a whole new assortment of capabilities, it also requires a real well thought through process, number one. But number two, you have to think through the dilemma that it creates with multiple form factors. And then not only that, I mean, you've got me thinking now, like I'm a student. I was up all night in the library studying because I'm really studious, and I didn't charge my phone, and I walked out of my dorm room and my phone's dead, and I can't get into the building.
Right.
Unless, I mean, is it battery powered, the beacon in the phone, or the I don't know enough to know, but
yes. So right now, the mobile credential based off of the app, in some phones, the app will not work once you get to a certain battery level, right? I'm pretty sure you're aware of that. They are working, and I've talked to multiple different companies that offer mobile credentialing through an app, and they're working their butts off to get that mobile app to work at under 5% battery life, right? Because it matters now. That's something that we have to think about, right? Because if a student's phone is dead and they don't have access, how do we manage it at that point, right? So there has to be people in place that can still allow students to gain access, and also being able to verify who that student is, right? So if you only have your mobile app, right, which has your picture in it, and you don't have a physical card, how can I identify that you belong here and who you are? Which now becomes a resource-intensive thing, because now you have to have resources in place to be able to identify that. Now, it's not so bad in your residential areas, because you always got RAs and DAs there available to do that, right? But across campus, when they want to get into a lab, or they want to go into a building after hours, that's when it becomes resource-intensive now, right? Because you now have to have an officer or someone verify this person is who they say they are before you can allow them into the door. Regardless if you can remote unlock or secure that door from a dispatch office, you still have to verify that person, right? So again, that's where you just come up with integrated ideas of security systems to do that, right? By being able to pull up the access control system, looking at a camera of the person that's at the door, and seeing that picture inside the access control system where you can verify that person is who they say they are, and also looking at their access levels that they've been assigned to say they belong in that actual building or room or whatever the case may be. So there's ways to do it. It just takes a huge conversation. But of course, when you add mobile, the form factor of mobile and card adds a different layer of critical thought process for the back end subject matter experts to ensure that we're still being able to manage that in an effective manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great.
It's complex.
All right.
It's very complex.
Yeah, I'm not approaching this as a security expert. We're a third party, and every time I have a discussion with the HID team or any subject matter expert, I learn so much because, especially in your case, you're trying to meet the needs of students, and you're trying to meet the needs of a librarian, or a library management team, or what, all of these different, like shareholders or stakeholders, as you said, and it brings up new use cases or challenges and dilemmas. So it's so,
yes.
It's so fascinating. All right, so last couple of questions. There's just one or two. Let's say you have the open checkbook, but you also could create anything you want from a security point of view. What would you like to see, 5, 10, 20 years in the future? Elon Musk comes to your campus and says, hey, let's rethink physical access control, or what would you do? What's the Tesla of that?
I think the Tesla of any physical access control system is ensuring that it's integratable to anything that you have. I don't think physical access so let me give you this scenario. This may be something that if you think about it right now, you could probably recall hearing this in corporate America or anywhere. 10 years ago, when anyone mentioned physical security, they mentioned a camera, right? They didn't mention physical access control at all. They mentioned the camera. Oh, put a camera there, put a camera there. Now in today's time, they're mentioning, oh, we need access control, right? Versus the actual camera itself. Well, I think what we have to talk about now is introducing the integration between all your physical security elements into one to ensure they're all communicating and talking. I think that is the biggest key right now. So it's upgrading all your cameras to ensure they're all IP, upgrading your back-end host computers to ensure you can essentially manage those and essentially tie those in together through whether it's a software or SDK API integration, or hopefully it's not relay-based with a physical device on the front end, but also ensuring that you have redundancy within all your systems also to ensure that that failure is not an option for them, right? So if I had an open checkbook, the most important things that I see is the integration path that's there with all my physical systems, ensuring that all my physical security systems are, if not at market standard, I almost can't say that. They have to be at what we provide market standards to be based off environment. I think that's what we miss when we say market standard, right? Market standard can be driven by whatever environment you're in, right? So we have to know the environment that we're in and how to support that specific environment. If this was a high-rise building, how do I support this environment for cameras and access control? Unfortunately, we're not in just a high-rise building. We're in a city. We're our own municipality, right? So how do I support this in 160 plus buildings spread out over 3 or 4 different cities, right? So because we have off-site campuses everywhere, right? So how do I support integrating my security? So I think physical security, the access control part, the PAC systems are, of course, part of the foundational of it. But I also think that you have when you talk about physical security across the board, you have to think about the ID card, the credential. You have to think about the physical security. You have to think about your partners and OEM partners is out there for your door hardware and your integration pieces for those systems. And you have to also think about your intrusion and your call for assistance boxes. And I can keep going on with off-site software applications that need to be integrated that you can view and that you can communicate to. And that's even including your trusted databases that houses all your information for all your people, all your employees and your staff and students. So ensuring that all that's integratable and being able to do dual verifications of that and authenticate through those different systems, I think that is the key to ensuring that you have a full security, a full operating security platform across any higher education.
And that really paves the way for any future changes that you might make as well, if all of those things are.
It sets the stage for it, right? So now, in 5 years, when there's a new system out or a new software platform with all your stuff integrated, it makes it more easy to be able to talk to those different systems or integrate those new systems in. So
is there anything this is my last question, because we're right I'm coming up to the hour. Set aside what you're doing now and what's not out there yet that you would love to see from a security point of view. Like, it hasn't been invented yet, but maybe you think about this on your walks at night. Or
well, I think a lot of things there's a lot of things invented. Again, my biggest thing to this is the communication between all the other different areas that affects physical security, right? Like lighting, right? Like landscaping, right? Like door stops, right? So it's all these other elements that affect the physical security to ensure that it works, right? So like power, right? So HID did a great thing by buying life safety power, which gives us the ability to be able to now look at our power consumption on any access control point over the network, right? So it's those type of innovative things that are in some areas that have not been created or dominated yet in the field, and it doesn't support the physical security. It actually breaks down our physical security and add points of failure, right? So I think those are the things that we have to look at now, right? What type of lighting are you installing everywhere to ensure that the camera is not being blinded or doesn't have dirty light or reflective light coming from based off the versus this daylight or dawn, right? How does that impact the physical security element that you've installed, right? Door stops, ensuring that a door stop is not installed in a position where you're destroying access control points or you're causing that door stop to mess up the actual, I can't think of the name of those things right now, and I know them too, on the door. Can't think of the name of them right now. The three things there on the door that holds the door up. Can't think of them right now. Hinges. There you go. Hinges. Yep. Yeah. Right. So because we see that happening, right? So we see doors being swung open and hitting the door stops, and then it continues to do that over time. Over 5 or 6 months, it starts loosening the hinges on the doors. So now your physical security is not working because the door is not closing all the way. Right. So it's those type of innovative technologies that you have to think about when you are building, designing, and implementing, installing, deploying physical security across the university, right, or across any platform. It doesn't matter what it is. You have to think about those type of cause and effects in installing door hardware and even paint on walls, right? Paint affects lighting from cameras in some instances, right? So those things, I think there should be a design criteria based off of how you're installing each physical element, and those design criteria should be mapped out in some type of 3D Revit file or a design criteria based off of a door schedule, hardware schedule that's in a CAD drawing that shows all these things, and it adds value to your installation practice. It reduces failure.
I think that's a really, really great answer to that question, though, because it's not like you're coming up with something that's pie in the sky. This is more about just every aspect of whatever process within a building that needs to be secure affects the security. And so
Yes.
there's a whole holistic approach that needs to be taken from, you know, how many times have I watched like Dateline or one of those shows, and there was the camera and there's a glare in the camera so you couldn't see, and it's from a street light, you know? So
Exactly. Right.
Your point's very, very well made, that it's like somebody slapped up a camera, but they didn't think through all of the other aspects of what would affect that camera and its usefulness in security. And how many times have you seen where somebody puts up a camera, but it's not real? It's just there to make it seem like they're security. Yeah. And so it's getting away from we're only putting up security to give the impression that we're secure, to actually being secure and thinking that through in a holistic approach across all applications, whether it's
in all applications. I tell you, we've settled in our minds that we're okay with the perception of security versus the real versus the real approach of trying to be secure, right? So and I hear that a lot. Well, it's the perception of security. Well, the perception is not reality. It's the perception. We want to give someone a real thought process when it comes to what we're doing to add value to them being at the University of Houston, based upon their safety and security. We want them to see that value, right? We don't want them to just to see the perception of. And when we're okay to settle with that perception of, then I think we are failing our student, staff, faculty, and the people that rely on us to build these systems, design these systems to be proactive approaches to securing and providing safety, right? So we begin to continue to be in the same narrative of being reactive because we know we have a police force versus trying to mitigate these risks with physical security up front. So,
yeah, fantastic. Okay, I'm gonna hit the stop recording button. We're right over the hour.
All righty.
And let's see. Sometimes